Yes. Let's get this started.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Mind Abyss. Um, I am Phi, by the way. My friends call me Nature. You guys will come to find that out.
What's going on, guys? My name is Mark. And yeah, glad to be here. And don't really know what we're gonna talk about. We got a couple ideas, but we're just gonna, let these ideas flow, basically. And
The topic before we got going today, which seems to be a popular topic in society now, especially on Facebook, that a lot of people don't realize isn't so black and white, is addiction. Um, and people thinking that it's a choice um, over a mental disease or disorder. From my knowledge, the DSM 5 has classified it as a mental disorder for a long time now. Um, I can see where people think it's a choice because absolutely I agree it's a choice to first, pick up a drug and do it. But it's also being proven that addiction, from my understanding, is hereditary too. And obviously people don't know that they are susceptible to that before doing a drug. And I understand the idea of, oh, just never do a drug. Well, sometimes people go through harsh times and people never want to question, well, what led that person to doing that in the first place. um so I guess I can get the idea where people think it's a choice, but to me it's not, because nobody just wakes up and says, oh, I want to ruin my life and become an addict.
right. So no, I'm kind of in the same position where it's like I can see both sides, right? I can see that one side is almost like it's a choice because people feel like they're choosing to do the drug, they chose to do the drug, so therefore it's their choice. They could have chose not to do it and they can choose to stop, but when you are addicted to something, it's not just drugs, it's hard to stop. And this is my point of view. It's like addiction might be a choice, but it might not be, where it's like, it's the life is a paradox thing where it's like, you know, I feel like what you're addicted to can be a choice. And I say can be because it depends on how mentally strong you are. It depends on your mental state of mind. It depends on why you're addicted to something. Are you addicted to it to run away from your problems, or are you addicted to it just because it feels good? Are you addicted to it just because it benefits your life, or are you addicted to it because it destroys your like, and don't realize that it destroys your life? Because I feel like we're all addicted to things we don't realize, like not just drugs. Because when you talk about addiction, the one thing in everyone's mind is drugs, and I think that drugs basically don't even really, it's not the drug itself, it's the drug acts as a key in your brain and releases certain molecules that makes you feel good. Now, activities do that, and sugar does that, and caffeine's a drug, and there are. I feel like addiction is on levels. Like there's levels to it of what you can be addicted to. Now, when you're talking about drug addiction, the dopamine rush of drug addiction is so high that you couldn't get that. Like meth, for example, the dopamine release of meth is so high of a level that you couldn't get that doing normal activities. I mean, sex doesn't, like an orgasm
And
doesn't
that's
even
possibly
compare.
why it's so addicting as a substance itself, because it gives you such a such an intense rush from all the dopamine release.
No, right. And I feel like it's like, and that's psychological, because people say meth is psychologically addicting, but I could see how that's why it could be severely psychologically addicting. But then there's substances that, like, literally, if you are addicted to it, if you stop taking it, you feel like you're going to die. Like, you literally feel like death. And it's
Being dope
like,
sick.
yeah. And it's like, is that at that point, what is a choice? Where it's like most people, when they get sick, when they get the flu, when they get something, they take a medicine. Where it's like when, those people are dope sick, all they're thinking about in their mind is, they want that shit to go away. And it's a cycle of stopping the withdrawal. And So I feel like there's different levels, and that's why I think it's not as black and white as a thing that people think, because it's so addiction's so broad. It's like, what are we addicted to here?
How
And
many people are addicted to picking up their phone and checking for notifications on whatever social media site that they have been posting things to or talking to people on? That in and of itself, uh, from my understanding, has or causes a release of dopamine in the body, and it's you can see this everywhere you go. People are constantly on their phones, and the last few days I've had a friend helping me fix my dreadlocks because they were a mess because I didn't take the best care of them. They look much better now. Um, but I realized just over the last 3 4 days, like, oh wow, like being on my phone just those couple days made me realize like I'm constantly checking to see if someone's responding to me. Um, there's other food addictions people don't realize as well. People that are constantly going to the same fast food place and getting the same order. It's um, Another one I wanted to cover was also like pharmaceuticals. A doctor tells you it's okay to take something. So people that are in pain, they're taking opiates. They're in pain for a long time. It's been 4 or 5 months, and now the doctors want to stop giving it to them, and they realize, holy shit, I need this, or they think they need it. Also with benzos, especially. Benzos are a big one that are highly addictive, and if you're on them long enough and you don't even realize that you've become addicted to it because you just think, oh, I'm prescribed this, so I need to take it every day. Benzos, after a long time, the withdrawals from them themselves can kill you. They can give you seizures, and that's a scary thing. So when people say addiction's a choice, it's not always a choice. Some people get addicted to things and have no idea that they're even addicted, especially if it's something a doctor prescribed. Myself, my own personal story was spice because it didn't show up on a drug test. So for a year straight, I was smoking a ton of it because I had the money to afford it. So I was smoking way more of that a day than I ever have with weed. It was like 8, 10 grams a day. And I had no idea I was even addicted. I just thought, oh, cool, I'm just, relaxing. It's like smoking weed, it's legal. Until all of a sudden, a year in, and I get cut off from my supply and go through some of the worst withdrawals I've ever gone through in my life. And that's when I realized, like, oh, wow, like I was deep into an addiction and I had no clue. I had no idea. Some people don't even realize it. I've had friends in my life that I could see where they were going, and I tried to warn them, and they didn't listen and kept going down that road, and they had no idea they were even becoming addicted till it was too late. Addiction's a funny thing. The take I like to have on it is action and reaction. Yes, choosing to do a drug is a choice, and that's the action. However, we don't always choose the reaction to our actions, and the reaction to that could possibly be developing an addiction. Where there's other people that can do drugs often and not become addicted to anything. It's just like, you choose to have unprotected sex with somebody. That's the action. Sometimes the reaction to that could be an STD where you're going to need a penicillin shot to fix yourself up or catching something that doesn't go away. That doesn't mean that it was that person's choice to contact whatever STD they got.
I mean, realistically, they might have an addiction too. Like, I feel like
An
sex
addiction to
is,
sex.
yeah, sex is no different than, you know, I definitely can see how addiction is just I can, that's where I can see that it can, why people would say that it's a disease or a disorder of the mind, because it is something in the mind. It is something where it's like there is this urge to do a certain thing that other people don't have that urge necessarily.
Right, like a normal parent isn't just going to abandon their children. Like that's just not a normal thing in most cases. Where sometimes parents that are, have a newborn but get back into an addiction, they just abandon the child. It literally changes the way you think and changes the way you act. It's like you have to have it. It makes you do things that you wouldn't normally do, just like other mental disorders. Um,
Right. That's real though, and addiction, it's an interesting topic because, it's one of those broad topics, a broad, just it's very broad, just like the word drug, because drug and addiction and these things, they basically, it's hard to explain. It's basically like addiction really is something of the mind. Like it's hard to wrap into words. I mean, that's why most, probably doctors and scientists and therapists, they put down these words and these disorders, and they classify things in certain categories because what they're trying to do is understand the mind. But the mind is so complex that it's
You
like,
can't put it in a box and categorize it like it's a filing cabinet.
no, right, right. And it's like, addiction is so complex because even just talking about it and sitting here thinking about it, it's like, man, addiction is very, because honestly, my addiction, like, I'm addicted to, sugar, honestly. Like, I'm addicted to these certain type of donuts, and I know that it's bad for my teeth and shit like that. And, I got calcium deficiency and all this other shit, but like, I'm still eating it even though it's giving me pain, and that's a serious addiction if you're taking the substance or whatever the fuck you're taking even though it's causing you pain. And but I also have addictions that are also benefiting my life. And I think that addiction can benefit a life or destroy a life. Because I think there are people that are addicted to whatever, their dreams, their goals. Maybe some people are addicted to making
You
music.
get
That's why
that
they became,
dopamine release every time you achieve something.
yeah.
So that's like that becomes their drug. Another thing I wanted to add was I know myself several people who, once they understood their addiction as a mental disorder or disease, they actually understood that, hey, I need to get help so I can help manage this. It's just like when somebody is told, hey, they have a disease, they're like, oh, well, I should probably get some help then, huh? I should probably see the right doctors. It's the same with an addiction. Now, to play devil's advocate on myself, I had to bring up the fact that there are also other people who will use that to enable their behavior. Say, oh, I have this disease, I have this disorder, there's nothing I can do about it. This is why I behave in these ways, rather than wanting to actually get help. So, I can see both sides of that too, where it can be a positive thing and a negative thing. For myself, it wasn't until I actually got into psychedelics and got away from a lot of my addictions, um, and actually someone introduced the idea to me that addiction was in fact a mental disorder or a disease. It actually kind of helped me understand myself and realized, okay, there's certain things I really need to stay away from. If somebody ever offered me spice again, I'd have to say absolutely not. I know myself, it's not worth going down that road. Where there's other things that are highly addictive, and because I know myself now, I can indulge in those things every once in a while, since I don't like to drink, because alcohol was another one I got lost in while I was in the military. But I can indulge in these things from time to time and not get hooked, because I know, hey, you have this addictive behavior. So my rule for myself is, if I want to indulge in something, nothing more than 2 nights in a row, once a month. That's it. And this keeps me from getting hooked on anything. The only thing I don't follow that rule with is cannabis and kratom. But even with kratom, I don't take it more than 2 days in a row. I'll take it 2 days and then I'll take a 2 day break. Um,
Which is smart.
and that really helps, because I won't say I was ever heavily addicted to opiates, but I used to abuse the shit out of them. From an injury, in the military, I was prescribed them, and I was also surgery I had in high school. I got prescribed them, and that was when a friend told me, "Oh, take 2 or 3 of these, and you'll feel great." And I sure did, and that's what got me into it young. Um, and addiction is definitely in my DNA. On my father's side, I actually grew up kind of seeing him go through it. I love you, pops. I'm glad you're out of that, but got to use that as an example.
No, right, and see, it's on my side too. What's interesting is my dad was he used psychedelics. He did many drugs and substances. I don't know if he'd be comfortable with me sharing some of his stories, but I could say that his friend was used to dip, his cannabis in some opium and smoke, and smoke that. And what's interesting though is I definitely feel like it's in my DNA, and I feel like that's also why I do the life I live. I use plants and substances. What's interesting is this. It's like I use plants every day, but I wouldn't necessarily say I'm addicted to the majority of them. Like a lot, the ones that have addictive qualities, I research. Like I also feel like it goes to education. Most people do drugs; they're not educated on what they're doing. If people were educated on heroin before they did it and explained on what the withdrawal is like, what will happen exactly, well, just detail after detail, the dosages that would kill you, the dosages that
True
would not,
education and harm reduction.
yeah, then I feel like, it would be different, because I research all the plants that I use, even though I use three, four plants a day, every day. Sometimes they're not the same plants, in the day. And, I switch it up depending on the seasons or depending on my mood or whatever I'm looking for in the day and what I need. But that's what I mean. I feel like substances can hack your mind. You're like a quantum computer, and certain things, these plants and substances are like new different softwares that can help your computer run better. But people, I feel like they get addicted because they don't understand. And we, in a Western society, we live in a society where they take the strongest molecule and then isolate it and then give us the strongest molecule. And that's why, like, a lot of the most addictive substances we have were made by the pharmaceutical companies. You know, when even opium is probably the most addictive plant substance that I've researched, but it's like even that's not as addictive as, you know, let's say morphine or oxycodone, or let's get
Or
stronger.
heroin.
Yeah, stronger like heroin or fentanyl, or, and these things have a really serious withdrawal. I just feel like, man, I just feel like if people knew, they might choose what they're addicted to. Because yeah, I think addiction's in my DNA too. Like I think no matter what, I was destined to take something. Like it was in my DNA. My dad did it, and and it's like the Y chromosome for men, especially. The Y chromosome passes down genes and DNA and things like that, and it's like in the males. So I feel like it was in my DNA, but that's why I use plants. Now, there was a time in my life before I knew plants existed where I started using pills and, muscle relaxers and, and like opiates and just a bunch of downers. Like I was never an upper type of guy, a bunch of downers, but I found plants, herbs, kratom, and it's like, yes, some people will say, well, you just traded one addiction for another. But I could say the same with everyone else. What do you go to AA meetings or NA meetings? You're addicted to the meetings. So what happens if you stop going to the meetings? And people have this mindset where it's like they have to go to the meetings, and it's no different than the mindset where it's like, maybe let's use something else like a plant or eh, I don't know, even meditation or yoga. You can get addicted to meditation. The monks that live in the Buddhist, the Buddhist monks, I guarantee they're addicted to meditating because they meditate 4 hours a day. You have to love meditating. You have to be so addicted to it that to meditate 4 hours a day, you know.
I would almost like to see in the future, if possible, how psychedelic therapy could actually help with addiction. Um, because when I got out of the military, I hit a low point going through a bad breakup with the girl that I was with and everything, back home around a bunch of fake friends at the time. Um, and I was drinking, doing Xanax, Klonopins all the time. If I could get my hands on opiates, just whatever, anything that came in front of my face, I was doing it. Till the one night, a couple months after I was out, mushrooms came in front of my face, and I got to try them for free. And the mushrooms made me see how bad that these benzos were for me. I had lost whole weekends on benzos. And I'll never say I was, hardcore addicted to those, but I could see how addicting they were because I constantly wanted to have them because they just, at the time, made me just not care about anything, I guess. And then all of a sudden, the mushrooms made me see how bad they were for me. And like, I almost saw like how they made me just a zombie. Like I said, I lost whole weekends on them where I don't remember the whole weekend. But from there, I completely quit doing those, and then all of a sudden I stumble across LSD, and I do that, and I completely quit drinking, which was a shock to a lot of people because I was such a heavy drinker from the time I was 19 on. So it shocked some people that, oh my God, you don't drink anymore. Like, no, it's horrible for my life. I'm not going to partake in it anymore. which after years, I went a while being sober from that, where I was only doing psychedelics and exploring those. Um, One moment. And the timer going off in my pocket just kind of threw me off. But I never really got back into drinking till I understood myself better and realized, hey, you can indulge a little bit without having to get crazy drunk, and you can do it from time to time on special occasions. And that's when I allowed myself to have some wine or some beer every now and then, um, because I actually learned to understand myself through the use of psychedelics. Another big thing is I've obviously never done it, but I've heard about it. If you want to talk about it for a minute while I get the camera back up, is iboga. That's been proven to treat heroin addiction. There was an article I read about a Canadian doctor who was using it, who got shut down for using it. Who, if I'm not mistaken, his quote was, he's seen the worst of heroin addiction overturned in 3 treatments or less with iboga.
Well, Iboga is interesting because I watched this one video about this guy who was basically like an Iboga shaman, and he traveled through, basically America, giving, heroin addicts and certain people Iboga sessions. Now, this guy was he was pretty interesting because Iboga seems to attach to the opiate receptors. I think similar to the way that salvia does, because they were thinking about using salvia. Iboga, is in the same category as like it. It's a weird. It's a psychedelic that attaches to the opiate receptors, which is a little weird to see, and but because of that, it can actually stop the withdrawal, and it's said to stop the withdrawal, after, even some people said after one session their withdrawal stopped, and it's probably depending on what substance they were using or what type of opiate they were using. um, but Iboga is very interesting. It's African thing. It's really what's really it's sad. I guess it's kind of sad where it's like it's almost the only psychedelic that's like in Africa, where it's like Africa has like no psychedelics, and it has a lot of psychoactive plants, but like very few psychedelic plants. Um, so it's like uh, Iboga was like the one and only, and it was originally used to like kind of like psychedelics, where the shamans would use it and travel deep within their mind, or it's more to face your demons type shit. So it is interesting that it works for addiction as well, because it would make you face the addiction, face your demons. And I'm pretty sure you'll probably go through a psychedelic experience too, though. Like, I'm pretty sure it's
Oh,
not.
absolutely. I've read that it's actually quite terrifying for most people. Um,
But I feel like that's almost like almost like the scared straight version of like, you're gonna stop doing this drug, you're gonna stop doing this substance, and this is why what's wrong, and this is what happened. Like
yeah,
the
pretty much. That's what it
like,
sounds like.
and yeah, I've never tried it, but what's interesting is I'd be interesting to try it because I don't mind. I'm down to try things at least once. Like I've I, I I tried a very very small. I mean, I guess I couldn't even say I tried it because like I just tasted it, some Datura. You know what I mean? Just it didn't have any effects or whatever. But like I have some Datura seeds that I could ingest. And some leaves and stuff. But that's a thing that I'm scared of as well. But things like that are kind of used to face your demons. Uh, and I feel like there's that way to face addiction as well, where it's like you either can face your demons, face it head on, or take it slow. And there's nothing wrong with taking it slow, and there's nothing wrong with you're not a crazy motherfucker if you want to face it head on either. You're just it's whatever works for you. But I definitely think that realizing that addiction, the people that think addiction is not a choice, realize that slightly it might be. And the same thing for the other people. The people that think that addiction, is a choice, will think to yourself, how much of a choice? There's like, I feel like there's a range.
Right, like I can use an example. I know several people. I won't drop names, but they have literally been revived and brought back from their overdose and gone right back out and seeked more of what they overdosed on. that's not normal behavior. That's something crazy that, the addiction does to your mindset and to your choices and actions. A normal person would be like, holy shit, I just died. I'm not doing that again. And that's where I feel like psychedelic therapy could really help, because the psychedelic therapy would make you see, like, holy shit, I was literally dead. I need to cherish my life more and not do that, because next time I might not get so lucky. And they'll see that. I think another thing that would help too is if we took a good look at Portugal, what Portugal did in decriminalizing all drugs. Their addiction rates have gone down, their overdoses have gone down. Um, they have a certain amount you're allowed to carry any drug on you, and if you get caught with more or being a problem to society, or you have an addiction, they'll sit you down in front of I think a therapist and two other people, I can't remember exactly. And if they decide, like, yeah, you need help, they'll send you to get help for free, from my understanding. They treat uh addiction as a mental health problem over there rather than a criminal issue. It's not so much a criminal issue. It can become a criminal issue if the person doesn't get help, because then they're trying to afford their addiction by any means necessary. At that point, yeah, it's a criminal issue because there's victims. But if the person is simply just addicted, they're not a criminal. They're just a person that needs some help.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think that's another issue. Drug addicts get put in a category of criminals, and it's like it's then how are you a criminal for if there's no person getting harmed? And that's the issue, and that's why addiction is a hard topic to talk about, because nobody wants to. A lot of they say the first step of addiction is admitting you're addicted, and it's like nobody wants to admit to themselves they're addicted, not just to drugs, but to things, to everything. And once you would see the problem, then you can fix the problem. Whether that means, that you see that you have a disease or a disorder, or you just see it as, yo, this is a fucking problem and something needs to change. And that doesn't mean that can mean that you can go get help. That can mean that you fucking sit there and meditate and stop and think to yourself. Maybe it's time to help yourself, or maybe it's time to, regardless what the situation is, you have to realize that there is a problem. There is something wrong here with the situation. Now, there's sometimes there might not be something wrong. Maybe you just have to recognize that I am addicted to this thing, whether it's caffeine. You could be addicted to, a certain type of caffeine. Like, there are people that could get bags of coffee, but instead they have to get a Starbucks. And it's like, well, that's a certain type of addiction. That's an addiction, where you're spending more money than you should, where you could save a lot more money if you just bought the bag and made your own thing. But it's like they're not thinking about the long term. They're thinking about the short term, and that's what addiction is: short term reward, short term pleasure, short term dopamine rush, short term serotonin rush, short term what do they call it, endorphin rush, because when you take an opiate, it probably releases endorphins, attaches to the opiate receptors, and it's like a key and releases natural opiates in your body. And
Addiction too isn't always chemical dependency. I think a lot of people think that too. Like we were talking about, like sex addiction. There's gambling, and people say with the people gambling too that was all a choice too. Yeah, it all started with, oh, I'm gonna go to the casino with my friends, have a good time. That was the action. They didn't choose that the reaction of, holy crap, now all my life savings are gone. I've lost everything. Because a normal person wouldn't do that. A normal person would say, hey, okay, it's time to quit. No more gambling. Obviously, I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist or anything, so I don't fully, understand what addiction does to the brain. I can just speak on my own behalf. When I was addicted to spice, when they outlawed it in the state that I was in, every payday, I would drive 2.5 hours down to the state below to buy, anywhere from 50 to 100 grams until the next payday, because I had the money to afford it. So it was no issue. A normal person isn't going to do that. that's, an issue. And at the time, I never thought it was an issue. I never questioned, what, holy shit, why is it making me think like this? Why am I getting angry if I can't go get this? Um, that's part. I just feel like that's all part of it is that it does something to your brain chemistry that's literally causing you to change the way that you act. And I mean, you can see it with people that are going down the road of addiction. Um, the way they're acting is completely different from how they used to act before. Um, Sadly, I feel like I didn't have anybody to really tell me that I was beginning to act different because at work people never really noticed. Um, but I feel like other people around me did, and they just never said anything. Now, I doubt that at the time, I doubt that I would have listened to them, but I feel like as friends, one of them should have probably given me a heads up, like, hey, man, you're probably not making the best choices there. You should probably ease off on that shit a little bit. Would have at least given me something to think about. But then again, with the way addiction works, most likely I would have just completely tuned them out and not even listened and just been like, yeah, whatever, I'm gonna keep doing it. There was even a time I had a seizure from Spice. And what am I doing 2 hours later? Smoking more. Because I was a fucking idiot. Because I had to have that feeling. I had to have that rush.
I mean, addiction's a tricky thing because, man, you don't really you don't really know what you're getting yourself into with it unless you've been educated on it. But the majority of us have not, um, and that's the issue. And I feel like it's a societal issue. It's a society issue. It's the mind state as well. That's why I can see that. That's why I can also see the other side of like how it could be great to look at addiction as like a disease because once you realize you have a problem, you can fix it.
You can get help for it.
Yeah, and like I said, whether that means you get help or whether that means you just look in the mirror more and punch yourself in the face with reality, whatever you got to do to make yourself not do the things that are harming your life. But also just realize if it's an addiction and it's benefiting your life, think to yourself, well, why the fuck should I stop? What's the point if it's an addiction that's helping or that's benefiting or and usually those addictions aren't drugs. Usually those type of addictions are addiction to, to be motivated or to be driven or to have to get something done to, even like I feel like I'm addicted to pretty soon like I'm addicted to knowledge in a way where it's like I need to learn a certain amount of knowledge a day and like I've
You want to
trained.
learn something new every day, and if you don't, you're almost like aggravated that you didn't take in anything new.
Exactly. Almost like a drug addict would be if you were agitated that you didn't get your drug in you. And it's like I'm like that also with videos as well, where it's like I'm addicted to being productive now. Like I've replaced certain things. Like I feel like you'll never be able to. That's probably why it's almost like a disorder in the mind, where it's like uh, you'll never really be able to not have that type of mind. It's a certain type of mind, and
Something you got to learn to just, I guess, manage. Um, but I was gonna add in too. It's like people that say addiction is a choice, like you chose to become addicted. That's like saying also too that like type 2 diabetes is a choice. Like, okay, you chose your whole life to eat a bunch of shit food, and now you have type 2 diabetes or lung cancer or some kind of respiratory problems from smoking cigarettes. Oh, you've got that lung disease now. Well, you chose that because you smoked your whole life. It's like to reiterate on what I was saying earlier, we don't always choose the reaction to our actions.
we don't always know. I mean, is it really somebody's fault if they don't know? Like, if nobody's ever told them, nobody knows. Nobody knows that. Like, it's like, but it's weird that addiction only exists because because we're not informed on it. And I mean, it will exist regardless, but we're not informed on it. We're not taught about it. It's something that a lot of people put in the closet, like kind of shove in the closet type shit. Like conversations that were like they're hush hush, they're very delicate to have because people have their uh, very weighing opinions. You know, some people have really hard opinions on one side or the other,
It's
and
also, the way society looks at addicts as such bad people. Like, they're not all bad people. They're, if anything, they need a lot of love in their life at the moment. That's probably what led them to their addiction. That's probably um, what caused them to go down the road in a way is lack of love in their life. They've obviously had it rough and had not had many people to help them out. We never really question, okay, why did somebody become addicted to something? What led them to this point to even begin to start doing these drugs? Knowing they're bad, what caused them to do that?
I mean, and there's like I said, there's different types of addicts, and there's different levels to addiction because what you're addicted to will decide on what level of addiction you're gonna have, what type of withdrawal. But it's like I definitely don't think for me it's weird because I can see why I did substances throughout my life, like why I've done and why I do substances have changed. My why has changed of why I'm doing the things I'm doing, but it's weird that the addiction technically hasn't necessarily. It's just the addiction has changed too. I'm no longer addicted to taking pills like I used to be, or honestly, I used to be mentally addicted to smoking weed severely, where I would smoke a half ounce of weed a week and just me,
You
sometimes a
had to
little
smoke
more.
weed before you did everything. I used to be that way.
And it's like now I have enough self control because I realized, okay, that's an issue, so I had to stop that. And I have enough self control to also realize I put the time in something else. So instead of taking the time to smoke, I take the time to edit videos or upload a video, record a video. Pretty soon I'm gonna start making music again, and it's like when you're doing things, you don't really have time to have other addictions. And that's the thing with addiction. You could be a heroin addict and you could waste your life away doing nothing because all you're doing is the heroin, or you could be I guess workaholic technically, as long as it's a healthy work, a work that makes you feel fulfilled and great and makes you feel amazing.
Something that gives you that same sense of fulfillment, like that the drug gives you.
Yeah, basically, right. And I feel like then you'll be good. And but it's just about knowing you have an issue or knowing yourself, And I know myself, so I've never done meth. I've never done cocaine. I've never done. I'm not really an upper type of guy though, but like, because even when I did substance or drugs, I did downers like.
I can't deny I love my uppers. Can't
And
deny that.
that's the thing, though. That's what people don't realize. Drugs feel great. Like, somebody can say that, and that's the issue. I feel like there's nothing wrong with using some. I mean, doctors prescribe antidepressants. What is the difference between somebody that's a doctor giving somebody a drug to make them feel better?
And if they can't function throughout their day without taking it, then I'm sorry, you're addicted to it.
Yeah,
You need it. You have to have it. Also,
exactly.
I think, if we learned more about harm reduction about drugs, I think you'd see a lot less addicts as well. Like for myself, I don't like to drink. I know other people that drink 3, 4 times a week, sometimes if not more. But yet they'll look at me dirty because once a month I like to do some cocaine on a weekend, have a good night with my wife. But they look at me like, oh my God, that's horrible. You're a druggie. And it's like, no, I just don't like how alcohol makes me feel. But sometimes I like to let loose on something. Minus my 4 times a year using LSD. And once a year, me and my wife will have like a therapy night with either MDA or MDMA. But we get looked at sideways for that. But people that drink every weekend, that's normal in society.
Right.
Well, how come they can let loose on something but I can't? And it gets into the whole legality battle of it. And it's like, I get that one's not illegal, but alcohol is worse than a lot of illegal drugs.
And
It's
it's
one of the
like,
worst drugs on the planet, and I've seen it destroy people and families and make people become something they're completely not, but yet it's perfectly legal.
right. No. And I've seen. I mean, you see the whole, legality issue, and it's like, well, the law never dictates what's right and what's wrong. That's dangerous to put somebody else in charge of what's right and what's wrong, um, because I feel like if you know, and it's all based on education. We're not educated on really what molecules are, unless you're like went to college for it, or you're not really educated to a T of like, okay, the alcohol molecule attaches to GABA, and anything else that releases GABA, it's this. It would do a similar thing. They're all different. They all do different things, but it also releases GABA, and it's like, so what's the difference between some of these things that they prescribe that release GABA and alcohol, or when somebody's addicted? And now they do say there's alcoholism. They try. What's funny is they try to separate alcohol from addiction. They call it alcoholism. They say, yeah, I'm not an addict. I'm an alcoholic, and it's like that's the same thing. You're addicted to a certain substance, and and it's like you feel like you can't function without it. And like I said, there's nothing necessarily wrong with I feel like there's nothing wrong with that. I use kava from time to time. I use kratom every single day. I use kratom 3 times a day. And some people like would say, hey, that's a lot. Yeah, but with the life that I live, trying, with everything I'm trying to do, with all the things that I'm doing, it's like I have to do something to keep up with my lifestyle. It's a lifestyle thing. It's not even the substance. It's almost like I'm addicted to a certain lifestyle, a certain way of living where it's like I like to do the things I love to do and I'm addicted to them. And so it's like I use substances to help me uh, more better my life, I guess, to utilize them to make it easier to live the life I'm trying to live. And it's and some people would say that's dangerous. You shouldn't do that. And I agree. You shouldn't do that. That's why, I'm me. And like, I know myself though. So that's why I don't,
However, getting back into the legality of it, though, I don't think any government entity should be allowed to tell you what you can and can't put in your own body to medicate yourself or to give yourself energy or motivation or drive to do anything. I think, as human beings, we should have complete domain over our own bodies and what we ingest. I've always thought it's wild that anybody can tell me what I can or can't put into my body. That I can't take a certain plant, roll it up and smoke it, or that I can't eat a certain mushroom. Like that's wild when you really begin to think about it. It's absolutely insane. And people would say, oh, well, if we allow these things, we'll have fucking druggies running around all over the place acting crazy. Well, we've already got druggies running around all over the place acting crazy. But you know how many actual responsible drug users actually sit at home and use their drugs from time to time and don't bother a fucking soul? A lot of people.
right.
And also, too, how many people do you see acting crazy out in public on alcohol all the time? A lot. A lot of people do that. I think we should be able to ingest anything we want. And if it becomes a problem in our life, we should be able to get the help we need. That's just the way that I see it. I also think too, if they do want to schedule drugs and have them in different schedules to at least, I guess, make a little progress in that direction is to unschedule all Schedule 1 drugs because I feel like, I mean, everything does have some sort of medicinal use, especially psychedelics. And like, we can't even really study psychedelics or cannabis because they're federally Schedule 1. How are we ever going to know if there's some kind of unknown medicinal benefit to them if we can't study them further? We didn't get to conclude studies on them back in the 60s when they were studying LSD. Um, Speaking of alcohol, LSD was another one that was given to alcoholics to help them get over their alcoholism. If and I hope I'm not mistaken in saying this, but from my understanding, one of the co-founders of AA in the 12-step program himself was a huge advocate for using LSD to quit drinking. But you've actually got to use the LSD with those intentions because intentions play such a huge role in the trip.
I also feel like intentions play a huge role in the drug and your addiction. Like your intention of why you're using the substance. And, and
That's why I love the saying the difference between a drug, a medicine, and a poison is the dose you take and the intentions and why you're taking it.
right. Yeah, I agree.
It's like our 4 LSD experiences a year for myself, it's for self healing. It's like really, quarterly as the seasons change and I change each year. looking into a mirror and examining myself, seeing in my mind what I've done wrong, what I've done, or what I can do differently, what I still need to change within myself. So it's my intentions are a healing experience, and that's really what I get out of it every time. I feel reborn after every experience, and that's why I feel like I don't need to do it again for 3 months. I'm happy with what I learned, and I take the next 3 months to integrate the experience and to really understand everything I went through, because they can be, some of them can be very overwhelming or very intense, and it can take months to fully make sense of everything, especially the out of body type experiences. Those take a little while for me to always make sense of, to where I can actually be able to, describe what I learned and what was going on. So I feel like if I'm tripping, too much, too often, I'm not going to be able to make sense of what's happening. Everything's going to get blurred up, and it's just like too much to take in.
Yeah. Addiction's a interesting topic because, yeah.
That's another thing too with the scheduling of drugs. Schedule 1, we can't even test to see if any of these psychedelic compounds can actually help addicts, in controlled environments. MAPS is at least able to do some studies like what they've done on MDMA for PTSD, and that's awesome, and it's showing great results. And I, for one, believe that once we're able to do more studies on psychedelics, I think we're going to start finding a lot more benefits
Yeah, and I
to
think we'll
them.
yeah, I think we'll find new ways of solving addiction, new ways of looking at different ways of looking at the problem because I feel like that's
We
the
could
only
find
way
a
I
whole
was.
new a whole new way or a whole new avenue of psychotherapy itself to help people figure their own shit out, maybe, with what people would call a shaman, or in the right set and setting where it's peaceful, you feel relaxed. I've always said that I feel like LSD is like 5 years of psychotherapy in one night sometimes, depending on how much you go through and how much you can move past or what you experience, because obviously no two trips is the same. But I feel like I've understood my mind and how it works a lot through these compounds, and how to actually understand my emotions and my thoughts, and how to deal with them and remain calm through them, and to not have certain episodes where I'm freaking out over nothing. And I'll credit a lot of my better mental health nowadays to psychedelics.
Right. No, me too. I mean, I definitely credit, a lot of a lot of the way I am today is because of the substances I've used and still use. The psychedelics help plant the seed in my mind. And it's like after psychedelics, you do have to integrate it, right? Because it's almost like a psychedelic can show you, but it's like you have to integrate it into your life and into yourself. And for me personally, that's why I use certain plants, because certain plants help me integrate the knowledge, and it's almost like it's a reminder because I'm on the plant, so it's like a reminder. And definitely adaptogens, like that's why I use Janestema every day because Janestema is, it's an adaptogen. It's non-addictive, but yet I use it every day and I can stop whenever I want because it's non-addictive. But at the same time, some people still classify that as an addiction because I use it every day.
But
But
that's more just like, a healthy thing for your body. It's like lion's mane mushrooms. You can take that every day.
yeah,
Keep
but
your
lion's
mind
mane
sharp.
doesn't have as much of a psychoactive because Janestema still
Okay.
has a little more of a psychoactive effect.
Okay, see, I
Um,
don't think I've taken it yet.
and it's
So,
like it's definitely you can definitely still feel it, and it definitely balances you out though. It's a balance thing, and that's why I use it though, because I know myself. So I know I used to have an anger issue, so it's like Janestema helps me just, man, I just stay balanced all day. Like things don't really get me angry. I can react to a situation a little differently, and it's like they are right. Substances do change you, including psychedelics. Addiction changes you, and different things. These substances change you, but I've noticed that my psychedelic use has changed me for the better. You know what I mean?
I
It's helped
want to
me look at
know.
things in a different way.
I just had an idea pop in my head. Like, I want to know where all the hysteria from drugs really came from. Like, where did the idea come from that all these things are bad and they're gonna, make you lose your mind, become a crazy person? Like reefer madness. It's like now we realize we've been lied to about cannabis for so long. So that's That's the only way I can see cannabis, by the way, as a gateway drug, is that people are like, oh, yeah, this isn't so bad. So they want to see what else isn't so bad. But they're uneducated on these other things, so they don't truly know.
Right. That other things are worse than cannabis, because it's almost like, well, we've been lied to about cannabis. What else were we lied to? Because the same thing happened with kratom. I mean, that's the original reason. I didn't start taking kratom because I thought that, this is going to benefit my life and it'll help me stay motivated and it'll help me stay dedicated to some of my dreams and my goals that I'm trying to do. No, I didn't think that. I thought, well, the government's trying to ban it. And, well,
Why?
yeah,
That's
why?
what popped in my head.
Yeah, it's like,
Why?
why? It must be good. Like, I mean, if they're trying to ban it, it probably is just like they did with cannabis. That was my first thought, was cannabis. And I
They're
was
trying to
like,
ban another herb in my mind, and maybe it's the wrong lane of thinking or it's too much of a conspiracy type of mind, but in my mind, it's like, oh, they're trying to ban an herb. Why? It must be good. And then I read it's helping people with opiate problems, which I would still, from time to time seek out opiates when I could. And I don't anymore ever since I started taking kratom. I'll take it 3, 4 times a week tops. But I'll take it 2 days in a row, spread it out 2 more days. But yeah, it was back in 2016. I remember when they were about to outlaw it. We went up to Ithaca, New York, grabbed some, came home, tried it, and I was like, wow, this actually makes me feel great. It makes me feel real happy. I got some energy, but yet at the same time, my body's relaxed. My mind is real sharp. It doesn't make my mind feel dumb like opiates do.
right. Like, not necessarily, there's like no mind intoxication. Because, like, even some, there's a lot of things that affect the
Even when I
mind.
even when I did the kratom extract, my body felt like I did a bunch of oxycontin or something, but my mind didn't feel super dumbed down. Like, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel my mind like it's dumbed down on opiates. But with the kratom, not so much. Like, my mind was still there. It was in a more uplifted, happier mood. Sometimes I even feel agitated when I take opiates. Like, the smallest thing can set me off or agitate me. I don't really feel that with kratom at all. And like I said with kratom, where I'll take it 2 days in a row and then take 2 days off, I wouldn't be able to do that with something like oxycontin or morphine. It'd be day three, I'd be like, oh no, I'll take it today and then tomorrow I'll take it off.
And
Day four, I'll just
you
keep
say that
taking it and
again and
keep taking
again.
it and keep taking
Right.
it. Where I can actually do it with kratom. And like I was saying again, why should any government entity tell anyone, oh, you can't take this? Especially if it's legitimately helping people with pain. I know a big demographic for kratom is people like 35 to 55 years old that have different joint pains, arthritis. They take it for that. Some people actually prefer 2, 3 grams of kratom in the morning to a cup of coffee because you don't crash as hard or you're not as jittery as coffee, but yet you still get the same kind of mental stimulation. So it's ever since I started tripping, it's just been a wild idea to me that somebody else can tell me or you as a human being what we can and can't ingest.
Hmm.
Like why?
No,
It
right.
it literally now makes no sense to me.
I mean, that almost forces people to use certain substances. And I feel like when you have a society that is forced to use only these substances that are in this box, it molds the society into a certain type of society.
I believe Terrence said something about that. Like you can tell a lot about a society by what drugs they allow. And I've always said I like the idea for America that they allow caffeine, they allow nicotine, they allow alcohol. Nicotine to if we want to not be so stressed out during our miserable work days. Caffeine to keep us going during our miserable work days, and then alcohol on the weekend to make us forget about our miserable work days
Mm.
until we go do it again the next week.
It's designed so we just work in the machine. And psychedelics break us out of the machine. They break us out of the matrix. They make us aware of what's going on. They can in psychedelics, they're not something that you use every day. So it's like they're almost anti-addictive. Why is it the substances that they allow are addictive, but the substances like psychedelics that are almost anti-addiction because they almost like kind of scare you out of your addiction or reset your body or reset your mind.
That's what I mean by rescheduling them. Because Schedule 1 are supposed to be the most addictive, they have the most potential for abuse, and they have, mental and physical dependency. Um, Psychedelics don't have any of that, you know. And I'll play devil's advocate for a minute that people, yes, they can get lost to psychedelics, tripping 2, 3 times a week, and I feel like they're just not they're not getting as much out of the experience as they should, and that's why I only trip once every 4 months because I feel like I get the most out of every experience every time. Like I'm almost overwhelmed with every experience, the way we push it, you know, what we do in the trips, the way we meditate and get into it and everything. So yeah, people can get lost to it, but there's no, you know, physical addiction or withdrawal from it. You might get mentally addicted where you're like, "Oh my God, I love being in that state of mind," or I love seeing things that way, but it's completely psychological. So they're really have so much less potential for abuse than even methamphetamine, which is Schedule 2, which has a very high potential for abuse, but yet it's Schedule 2 because they prescribe it to people with very bad ADHD under the brand name Desoxyn. And a lot of people don't even know that. It comes in a little 5 milligram pill. So how is that Schedule 2, but something like LSD, which is very safe to the body, is Schedule 1, and we can't even do any studies on it. You know, people are microdosing on LSD nowadays and finding out that it works for their productivity almost better than an Adderall and keeps them calm during the day, helps them be creative and think logically at the same time. Um, you know, if that could replace Adderall with a lot less side effects, like I've seen people get lost to Adderall prescriptions. Even just taking it as prescribed, I've noticed their behavior change. I've seen people get like paranoid in day-to-day life from taking it for a year or two. Hey man, you should probably stop taking that, or maybe get some help because I can see some changes in your behavior, and it's definitely not normal. I don't want to say normal because I don't like the word normal because who decides what normal is, but I don't know really how else to describe it. That you can see the paranoia in their behavior, where
Where it's not beneficial for
their
them.
thought process is just off the walls. And I know that to me that almost sounds contradictory because some people would think our thought process
It's
is off
off
the
the
walls
wall.
because
Yeah,
of the way
no,
we
right.
think from psychedelics. But
I mean, substances
we're
do
not
change
really,
you, but it depends
yeah, but
on what.
we're not really, you know, like paranoid in a sense. I'm trying to think how else I can describe
It's not affecting our day to
this
day
this
life.
person's
Like
paranoia, but like I don't like talking about people's personal stuff, but it's examples that I'm witnessing and actually seeing
in real life, so
from
you can
people I
actually, yeah.
know, so
So
I
it's like
can,
real shit,
yeah,
yeah.
I can only relate to my experience.
Right. But I mean, we can also see other people's experience because you, so you can, that's the thing where it's like you can see what a substance does to somebody when you actually witness it. You know, where it's like, okay, well, you know this person before, and then, you know, later, years down the road after their drug addiction, they now are a different person. I mean, it happens all the time with heroin, with
That's
meth, with Adderall, with.
that's part of the reason why I've never actually gone and gotten a prescription of Adderall or Dexedrine or Vyvanse, because I know how I am, and I feel like I'd start taking it too much. That's why every once in a while, like I said, I like my uppers, so I'll go seek those out every once in a while. It's much cheaper taking 30 milligrams or 60 milligrams of Adderall than getting a gram of Coke. So, you know, like I said, once a month, I like to indulge in something.
Right.
So,
But I mean, even that's self control, you know, and like even with me, where I just strictly stick to plants, where it's like, you know, in psychedelic, the only plant I don't use is would be considered LSD, but like even that's plant derived, but
from my understanding, it's only semi synthetic because
yeah,
it's derived from a natural source.
which is good.
You need that natural source to uh, do what you got to do. I sometimes almost I don't know if I dislike it how fond I am of LSD because I speak of it so much. I feel like I do have a passion for it, and this is why I feel like I can relate to Timothy Leary so much. Like I see his passion for it, and I think it's a tool that a lot of people just don't understand how to use. You can get so much from it, and you can benefit so much from it by taking it and meditating or just laying back, relaxing, going on a nature hike. Like, there's so much you can do to push the experience. I just don't think a lot of people know that. It's so underrated. I'm obviously going to talk about that a lot on this podcast, especially the more we explore. We have an experience coming up soon. June 21st is our next one because the 4 trips are every solstice and equinox. Um, so that's our next one coming up, and again, I'm eager to explore it to just see how much deeper again we can take it with meditation techniques or dancing around like we do. There's to me it's a special molecule. I have so much respect for it. Um, to me, it's my teacher. How Buddhist monks got to learn from somebody. They learn from their master. To me, LSD is my teacher. Um, I have no problem admitting that. It's been probably my best teacher through life and teaching me. I guess that's one of the best ways I can put it. How to deal with my thoughts, how to deal with my emotions, how to handle situations in life, giving me different insights in life. Like on this last trip, I'm just beginning now to put it together even more. I had the idea that, the universe is reactive. And obviously, I've thought about that before, but it popped in my head. And it's like every time I come around this idea, it goes deeper. And I'm really beginning to understand this more how, the frequency that you vibrate at or that you're radiating, the more you learn to stay there and the more you stay tuned into that frequency, the more things that are at that frequency are going to appear in your life. And I'm learning to see this more and more where the idea has popped in my head in the past, but like I said, the path being a spiral, you come back to things and go deeper on it each time. And just recent events in my life, I'm kind of starting to see how things are turning around because last year I feel like I just went through a bad year as a whole. I was in a negative vibration. I sucked myself into my own negative hole and I had to figure out how to get out of it because I pulled myself into it. I've got nobody else to blame but myself. This year the goal is to not go into that hole at all. And I forget where I was getting at again. I got this timer in my pocket that keeps going off. Um, but the LSD has been a teacher for me, especially recently, because this recent trip reminded me of so many of my past trips, which is what it does. And since that trip, I feel like I've been analyzing life so much different. My reactions to things have been calmer. My reactions to people have been different. The way I process and think about things is completely different from even before. It's like that's why I don't fully agree with Alan Watts's idea of when you get the message with psychedelics, hang up. And this is where I agree more with Dennis McKenna about psychedelics aren't an answering machine. Go back every so often because there's always more we can learn. Then if knowledge is infinite, and especially if the whole path of enlightenment or whatever is infinite and it just keeps going, then there's obviously more you can learn. There's always more you can better yourself on. There's always a way you can see things from a different perspective that you haven't seen it from before to just add to your knowledge on it. I'm gonna go start the camera again.
It's already been an hour, and I kind of gotta.
Real quick too, though, like, and this is why I say know yourself and your substances and how they react with you. Other people will say they've gotten a lot more out of mushrooms than LSD, or other people more from DMT or mescaline or peyote. Everyone's gonna have something that works different for them. It's knowing yourself, knowing your sweet spot, knowing what to do to get what you're looking for, knowing how to use the tool. I feel like the trances that we're going through on LSD are literally teaching me how to get into a trance on almost any psychedelic that I take. That's another way that I mean LSD's kind of being my teacher. I know the term shaman is kind of looked down upon now, but there's something that's happening in my trips where I'm learning something to actually enhance the trips and to take it deeper and to heal myself. And I'm actually learning to be able to pull other people into this trance. So it's not like it's just me. Um, so I feel like what I'm being taught there is to actually how to maneuver, I guess, the psychedelic experience in a way to get the most from it, to actually understand what I'm going through as well. I feel like the LSD's teaching me that, which is weird. That's the best way I can
Well,
put
I mean,
it. That
I feel like DMT has taught me that. You know, I feel like DMT, as weird as it sounds, I feel like DMT has taught me how to be me. It taught me, it just showed me me from a different perspective, which it's not necessarily that it taught me, it showed me me. Where it's like, you know, other things, other substances don't really show you yourself, they help you hide from yourself. And that's why I love.
psychedelics are like a mirror to the soul. They're gonna show you you more than anything else. If you have a problem and you're trying to run from it, psychedelics are not the idea. And I just told a friend this earlier today because he wanted to trip and he's going through some stuff. I said, don't, man, especially because you've never done L before, you've never done this substance. Don't. It's not just external set and setting, it's internal set and setting. And if you're not in a good, peaceful place in your mind and in your heart, you might have a very rough experience because it's going to show you head on what the issue is and what you need to fix and what you need to face and let go of and move beyond. And if you don't face it, you're just going to run from it the whole experience. You're going to be anxious, you're going to be stressed out, you're going to be scared and having what people would call a bad trip because you don't want to face yourself.
Well, I don't mean to cut this, but I got dinner waiting for me, and then I got a band
Oh,
practice.
oh, what's dinner?
I don't exactly know. She said she would surprise me.
Awesome. Surprises are great, man.
So that's pretty dope. But yeah,
All right. Well, hey, I hope you guys like what you hear. I got to get some motivation or some discipline to start making videos for my YouTube channel again. But my
just get
YouTube
addicted.
channel,
Just get
right? I got to
addicted
get
to it,
addicted to it, man.
bro.
Like, I love doing this podcast. I just love sitting here talking. So I got to get addicted to that like I am to this. But my YouTube channel is The Eye of Phi. If you like what you hear, I got some other videos over there. Check them out. Just, it only takes one click to like and subscribe to the channel.
Right. My YouTube channel is Mark Dreams 2, and on every other social media, it's Mark Dreams 25. So BitChute Mark Dreams 25, Minds.com Mark Dreams 25, Instagram, and
I
yeah.
should add that with my other social medias, minds.com, which I'm just beginning to use, and Instagram. It's also the Eye of Phi. I don't have like a artist page set up for Facebook at the moment, or I kind of do. I just haven't done much with it, but I believe that's also called the Eye of Phi. So it's just the same for all those, just like with his.
Well, and yeah.
I hope you guys enjoyed.
Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out, guys.